These so-called HOA enforcers kept treating my fence like it didn't exist, jumping it, crossing it, standing on my land like it belonged to them. And the HOA president? She was convinced I was hiding something. What none of them understood was this simple fact. My land wasn't just outside their authority, it was about to become the lesson that ended their little power game for good. Before we dive in, tell me something. What country are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and let's see how far this story really travels. I owned this land long before neat rows of matching houses appeared next door. Before manicured lawns. Before HOA rulebooks thicker than phone directories. This was open pasture. Acres of it. A fence I built with my own hands. And a deed recorded so long ago it predated the HOA by decades. I never attended HOA meetings. Never paid their fees. Never followed their rules. Because I wasn't part of them. That fact didn't sit well with Diane. Diane was the HOA president, the kind who loved clipboards, loved authority, and loved pretending both extended farther than they actually did. The first time she showed up, she wore a polite smile and carried paperwork like a shield. She said my property appeared to fall within HOA influence. I told her calmly that it didn't. She asked to see my deed. I declined. The next week she came back. Same smile. Sharper tone. Again she asked for proof. Again I said no. You wouldn't be so defensive if you were compliant, she said. I'm not part of your HOA, I replied. And I don't owe you anything. That's when everything shifted. A few days later, I noticed two men in black shirts standing by my fence. The shirt said HOA enforcement, bold letters, official looking but completely fake. They weren't knocking. They weren't asking permission. They were pointing. Counting posts. Measuring space with their eyes. The next morning I caught them in the act. They jumped my fence. Just like that. Boots over wire. No hesitation. No permission. I walked out and told them clearly, "You're trespassing. Get off my land." One laughed. The other said they were verifying compliance. You have no authority here, I warned. Next time you cross that fence, it won't be a polite conversation. They hopped back over like it was a joke. But it wasn't. Over the next week they did it again. And again. Sometimes together. Sometimes alone. Always crossing the fence. Always ignoring the warning. I went straight to the HOA office. Diane leaned back in her chair while I explained everything. My officers are doing their job, she said. Your officers are trespassing, I replied. She smirked. Well, maybe if you showed us your deed, this wouldn't be necessary. That was the moment it clicked. They didn't want compliance. They wanted control. They wanted my land folded into their HOA, quietly, forcefully, through pressure and intimidation. And they thought those fake enforcers hopping my fence would scare me into submission. They were wrong. The next time I saw them preparing to cross, I didn't yell. I didn't warn them again. I went back inside. Because I was done asking. The following day, I hired a licensed installer. We discussed everything: voltage limits, legal requirements, warning signage, grounding. Nothing hidden. Nothing illegal. What I installed wasn't a trap. It was a boundary. By sunset, the fence looked exactly the same. Same posts. Same wire. Same gate. The only difference? Clearly visible yellow warning signs placed every few yards. I also installed cameras. Multiple angles. Motion triggered. Cloud backed. If they crossed again, there would be no confusion. 2 mornings later, I heard boots on gravel. Same 2 men. Same routine. One grabbed the fence. The moment he touched it, his body locked up. He yelped and fell backward hard. The second guy rushed in to help, and grabbed the wire too. Big mistake. Both lay stunned in the dirt. I stepped outside calmly. Morning, I said. They shouted. Accused. Threatened. I pointed at the warning sign 5 feet away. You were warned, I said. They retreated, this time using the sidewalk. I thought it was over. I was wrong. Less than an hour later, Diane arrived in her SUV, furious. She screamed that I assaulted her officers. She called the police. Neighbors came out. Phones started recording. Good, I thought. Let them all see this. When the deputies arrived, Diane launched into accusations. I stayed calm. I showed the deed. The surveys. The camera footage. Every trespass. Every warning. Every shock, clearly recorded. The deputies didn't need long. The fence was legal. The land wasn't HOA property. The men weren't law enforcement. One of them cracked and admitted everything. Diane had ordered them to pressure me. That was it. The fake enforcers were arrested for trespassing and impersonation. Diane was detained for conspiracy. The HOA was investigated. And my land? Officially reaffirmed. Independent. Protected. Untouchable. Some boundaries aren't suggestions. And some lessons only hurt once that I thought the arrest would slow things down. I was wrong. They sped everything up. By the next morning, the entire neighborhood was buzzing. HOA emails started flying out with vague subject lines like boundary clarification and temporary enforcement pause. That's how you know panic had set in. The sheriff's office didn't waste time. They opened a formal inquiry into how the HOA had been operating, who authorized enforcement actions, and why unlicensed individuals were posing as officers. Surveyors returned to the area within days. This time not hired by the HOA, but by the county. Bright flags went into the ground. Metal stakes marked the real property lines. And suddenly the truth was visible to everyone. My land stood alone. Always had. Diane tried to backpedal. From holding cell to damage control. Her lawyer claimed misunderstandings. The HOA board claimed miscommunication. But the footage told a different story. Multiple angles. Multiple days. Clear intent. The two men weren't confused. They were instructed. Directed. Encouraged. Neighbors began stepping forward. One after another. Stories poured out. Someone had been fined for a driveway crack that wasn't on HOA land. Another had his fence flagged without warning. A third admitted those same men had jumped his backyard fence, just to check setbacks. The deputies added it all to the file. Diane was formally charged with directing unlawful enforcement and conspiracy to intimidate. The board immediately removed her to save face, but it was too late. The HOA's reputation collapsed almost overnight. Meetings were canceled. Enforcement letters stopped. And the phrase HOA cop became a neighborhood joke, the kind that sticks. Meanwhile, my cameras kept rolling. Nothing crossed the fence anymore. Not even close. A few weeks later, everything felt different. Quieter. The pasture looked the same, but the tension was gone. No eyes watching. No trucks slowing down. No fake authority pretending my land belonged to them. The county finalized the updated records. My property was officially reaffirmed as independent, non-HOA, and permanently excluded from future claims. Copies were filed, stamped, and archived. The fence stayed exactly where it was. So did the warning signs. Not because I needed them anymore, but because boundaries matter. The HOA issued a public correction notice. Not an apology, just legal language admitting they were wrong. Diane's name vanished from their website. The two men disappeared from the neighborhood entirely. And something unexpected happened. Neighbors started waving, stopping to talk, thanking me. Turns out, standing your ground makes space for others to breathe. I didn't set out to expose anyone. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted my land respected. But when people mistake silence for weakness, the lesson has to be loud enough to stick. Now, the only sounds I hear are wind through the grass and birds along the fence line. No trespassers. No threats. No pretending. Just peace. And that's how a few ignored warnings turned into the downfall of an HOA that forgot one simple rule. Not every line can be crossed.